Well, from an injury standpoint, Reggie has done everything he can. I just don't know if it's going to be good enough to get there by Saturday. That'll be kind of a game time decision. But other than that, some other guys been banged up. Tariq will be back. Zai will be back. Guest will be back. Des Schuster practiced with us this week. He isn't totally clear to go with us, travel with us this week, but expect him to be back with us next week and probably in some type of rotation, maybe by coming out of the bye week. Just not quite there yet. He's had to be idle for 6 to 7 weeks. So really like the way our guys practiced. Did some things out there today. Was trying to get some wet weather early in the week. Obviously, I can't control that. I thought we were going to get a little bit Wednesday, didn't, so Thursday. So we forced some wet ball work today. Expecting some weather in the game. Obviously, rain is water, and then they're calling for severe storms, so lightning. So we talked about a couple things that would entail delays. This group hasn't been one since I've been here, so definitely briefed them on that. And then really just from a schematic standpoint, like the way our guys have handled the adjustments, totally different offense, kind of a little bit different defense. We faced these guys 2 years ago, so there is some carryover for the guys that played in that game. Very similar personnel and schemes to what they've done then. But this game this week is about us and homecoming game out there, so I know they'll be amped up. Obviously, coming off their loss to Ohio State, but a 5-1 football team is really good. So tremendous challenge for us this weekend.
But just one more about the logistics with Dez. For someone who hasn't been able to how do you find the right timing and when to accelerate him and maybe understanding a need?
It's a good question, but really right now it's controlled medically. He wants to do everything. We kind of got to restrain him and pull him back. Even really since he got here, it was kind of an unforeseen condition that he had to work his way through, and so we kind of have to balance this one a lot through the medical people more than him.
Coach, is Maryland a new building for you? Have you ever coached?
I've never been there. There's not a player or a coach. I'm sorry. For me as a head coach or a player that I've coached, I've asked this repeatedly. There's not one player that's gone and played at Maryland.
What do you care about when you go to a place you've not been to?
It really doesn't matter. It's 100-yard field, so it's kind of like when we talk about, going on the road to Northwestern, Wisconsin, Purdue, Minnesota. Like it's a field. It's a field. We do talk. I made a big point in my first year when we started going on the road, especially going to that Penn State game where it was going to be 100,000 people, and the 74 players on the travel squad, right, and the coaches that go are really the people that determine that game. In a sense, it's kind of true for home games, right? But away games a little different because you're in a hotel, unfamiliar to you, everything from A to Z. We do have a lot of parents that travel, right? So there's an element of that. But to be successful, you got to be able to win on the Big Ten on the road.
Is there something you need to have with you when you go on a road trip? Like something personal that you got, obviously, other than the team. Something personal you bring with you everywhere.
No, we kind of treat every road game, home game the same. One of the things I've tried to do as a head coach. I came out of one program that kind of did things consistently home and away versus a team that treated home versus away totally different. Okay. And had a lot more success in the first, just being able to, even though it's an away game, you kind of have to approach it the same. That's why we stay in a hotel the night before. Most teams do that, sure. Right? There's a lot of carryover. Just the familiarity of being at home versus away is different.
But I know you talked about the block punt on Monday, but
Yep.
what corrective steps in practice have kind of been a conversation and then just broadly like an assessment of that position?
Yeah, we've been, that unit in particular have been one of our positives. From a year ago, there was some times in the games that we lost where we didn't have great execution and dynamic. Hugh had been really good this year. That particular play that we ran was a rugby to our right. We had shown it, I believe, 3 times to the season and executed it fairly well. But on that particular one, there were 2 elements: a little bit of the snap, but also Hugh took off, got outside of the perimeter of the shield, and that caused the punt to be blocked. And we talked about it, made the corrections, made the commentary to make sure that we stay within the framework of what we're doing, and hopefully good results.
You said there's a lot of carryover from 2 years ago, but they seem to be really putting up points. What stands out maybe about what Talia is doing?
Yeah, for sure. Offensively, their quarterback has continued to get better, as good players do. One of the benefits of having a player that's played as long as he has with Locks, even Locks was with him at Alabama, so a lot of carryover. You can see their whole offense goes through him. Even they run the ball effectively well. Have done a really good job. He really has all the throws, in my opinion. He's got the short to long ball. He's got the touch pass and kind of that gamesmanship to him. That there's a play that jumps out to me on Saturday against Ohio State. I believe it's a 3rd and 3, third quarter. Game's tight. Ohio State sits down on the routes. The answer is there, and then he rolls out to his left, our right, and he creates a a one-on-one tackle situation with Ohio State defender, linebacker, and a DB, and he made them both miss, right? So when a quarterback can make something out of nothing, then you got something, and that's what he routinely does.
I mean, with Geske and Zach,
Yeah, Geske's clear too.
with both of them back, I mean, you've done some rotation at the guard spot. Do you still do that with those two coming off?
Yeah, we're trying to, inside in particular, I think it's fairly well established our two tackles, right, have been doing well and playing well. The reason we moved Isaiah out there was we really felt that was a position of need that we had to solidify. And then the inside two guard positions has been like kind of a revolving door, trying to get guys to play kind of by committee too. If we can have a guy piece together 2 30-play snaps and two guys, better than one guy doing it. But the problem is we just haven't had a consistent group or pool of those guys be available to every game. So Geske is he did go today. He hasn't been cleared all week, but he did get cleared today and actually practiced a little bit yesterday. And then Hunter Whiteneck, who had made some ground last week, and then Jordan, obviously, who's played a lot of football for us.
What kind of weakness look Altmaier had? Assess him at midway point.
Yeah. Well, I kind of said this even just right now to our players, right? This is game 7, right? So there's
Right.
no new players, right? I get it. Luke's the starting quarterback for the first time, but this is game 7. Miles Scott, this is game 7 as a starting free
Right.
safety. Guys that came in this season with repeated starts before we got here. This is game 7 of a year, and we shouldn't have any newness to us. There's going to be something that Maryland does, offensively, defensively, special team, that they've never done before, which will take everybody a moment to adjust to. But for the guys that have been playing now through game 7, like, you have to get better, right? And that's been a kind of a rallying point to us. Like, I get it, like 2 and 4 isn't where we want to be, but the fact of the matter is those losses are really double effective against us if we allow them to continue to perpetrate forward. So we've really made a strong emphasis about correcting the things that we've had, trying to maximize our strengths and minimize our weaknesses.
Johnny talked yesterday about how the defense, just compared to the first couple weeks, had cut down on those penalties.
Yeah.
I know you can address it, but what does it take for the players to go out and
Awareness. I think awareness that they obviously can't do certain things. Those things kind of like turnovers come in waves, but there's definitely some things, especially post-snap. I've said all along, right? When I talk about penalties, and turnovers, penalties within a play, sometimes those things are going to happen. Like last week, there was a face mask. Didn't love it, right? He was reaching in, but sometimes those things happen within a play, the holding call, a DPI, but it's the post-snap penalties. It's the, some of the defensive calls that were just, bad techniques that could result in, those are the things we had to eliminate. And there was a couple bright spots on Saturday. The overall efforts on offense, defense, special teams to play clean. Obviously, they were heavily penalized, but it just goes to show, just because you win the penalty battle doesn't mean you win the game.
Well, Johnny said he's kind of talked about being the next Travis Hunter as the first defensive tackle running back, dual-way player. Has he joked about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's awesome, except for I also saw a player that was projected to be a first-round pick blow out his ACL running the football. So there's a lot of intelligence for people that don't know, all right? But I would think Johnny, we've actually put him in at running back, did it last year in the bowl game. I think for us to get to where we want to be, we'll put the best person in position to get there. But Johnny's definitely aggressive, and his brothers are good running backs with balls in their hand, but Johnny, I don't know if that's his cup of tea.
How have you seen Aiden and Caden kind of respond this week to what could be their biggest role yet?
I think those two guys carry, and I'm sure you guys have interviewed them, they just got this quiet confidence. They're not an overly dramatic crew. They just kind of handle their business. Had a couple sidebar conversations, both of them this week, and I just think our guys respond to them. They have great chemistry with our group. Anytime a running back has the respect of the O-line group, I think both those guys do. I do like that they're kind of the yin and yang of one another, right? Like they kind of have similar traits, but also have some differences that make them what they are. I'm really excited to see them, and I know Reggie, Josh out there every day. That room, Thad's done an unbelievable job, and even Nick Fidanzo, right? Because of where we're at, has stepped in and had a good week. So I think the part that's fun for us is most people get their first opportunity through moments like this, right? You don't see it coming. It's an injury due to somebody in front of you getting hurt, and I thought those guys, we didn't know if Reggie were going to go last week, so we're really literally almost the same exact scenario again.
I know.
I mean, Isaiah was maybe one block away from a touchdown on Friday. Does he, I don't know, need to find a way for him to be a red zone target when you get
Isaiah Williams?
Yeah.
You talking about the run on the first play, or?
Well, I mean, just to get him in the end zone.
Yeah, well, what's happened to Isaiah, which is, what good teams do, he's getting double covered. He's getting, in the red area, it gets even easier, right? So they get him down in that situation and basically put a player inside and outside, so the routes that are effective out on the field where they can't do it as much aren't as effective in the red zone.
You know, Caden has talked a lot about the value for him personally of getting here in the spring. Like that's kind of a big deal to him.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in these conversations with recruits, like what do you pitch them
Yeah.
as the pluses and minuses?
You know, it's really evolved in my 15 years as head coach. I remember, I think the first mid-year transfer I had was Travis Frederick, who ended up being a first-round draft pick, played a long time in the NFL. But they have to have the maturity. But also one of the biggest factors into it, which a lot of people don't realize, is when you're a freshman and you come in June, right? You're here the whole summer. You may get a few days to go home right before break, and then you're here the all fall because you got a game every week. There's really no break. You come in January. Those mom and dads drop kids off in January. You literally can't practice you can't work with them except 5 days a week. So they got the weekends totally free. There is no pressure of game week every week. They can adjust a lot more academically. They get thrown right in the middle of winter conditioning, which has really no pressure of learning the playbook. You get acclimated to how we do things. So the process for me as a head coach is much more, I'm selfish, but to get those guys here in January, I've just seen guys be so much more ready in the first fall when they're here. They learn the playbook literally 3 times. They learn it during the spring, they learn it during the summer, and then they learn it during fall camp. And versus a freshman that comes in, kind of pieces it together. Some of them get in early and late. It's just a much more effective piece. And you're seeing more and more guys do it. I think last year we had 10 or 11. I would project us to have about that same number this year.